We make most of our revenue from branded content, which is a form of advertising, but we make videos. Like we'll do 80-90 shoots this month in Dubai alone. I would challenge the agencies and the brands to try and think of what does reach and frequency feel like in this digital world? Like, why am I spending so much on one asset and hoping the publisher, the algorithm does the job? Like, what do I do after that? You know, Instagram and TikTok don't have a rev share thing really rolled out.
Yeah.
So that's one element to it. And then the third bucket, which we don't really do that well on, is what we call direct to consumer. I just wonder, you spin off a Threads app, but you don't spin off a chat app for ChatGPT. You try and shove it into the search part of a messaging app, yet everyone else is going to Grok and an app and ChatGPT. Why didn't you create a new app? Podcasting has replaced TV shows. If you're launching a book, if you're trying to be elected for president, you go on podcasts. You don't go on the Tonight Show. But if someone gets fired from the Tonight Show, it's the biggest story of the week in America.
Let's go back to media and the publishing business. What would you say is how are publisher revenue models sort of changing, or have changed over the past few years, and how do you see them change over the next few years?
Yeah, so again, like digital publishing, can be, for me, it can be radio stations online or streaming services online or what were print publications online. And each of those had fixed revenue models. A lot of them were advertising. Some of them, if you're TV, you could get cable fees. Radio was mainly advertising. Print was advertising plus print fees. And then digitally, a lot of them adopted to subscription. Some online publishing companies like ours struggled with subscription. Yeah. People were used to content for free. But I think the rule of thumb is that you need to have many diversified revenue streams, and you should always, and I think if you have a solution that doesn't offer you that, the ability to do that, then I think you're kind of in trouble. If you just rely on one, if you rely on advertising and not subscription or other things. We make most of our revenue from branded content, which is a form of advertising, but we make videos. Like we'll do 80-90 shoots this month in Dubai alone. I think we'll do 11 this weekend. But, and our team are geared up to do that. But it's a content and a media buy over Lovin Dubai. And it's obviously Q4 and it's busy. But basically, I have three revenue streams. And one is that sort of like an influencer book a post or get it from an agency. Mm-hmm. I would challenge the agencies and the brands to try and think of what does reach and frequency feel like in this digital world. Like, why am I spending so much on one asset and hoping the publisher, the algorithm does the job? Like, what do I do after that? How many times do I reshare that asset, or how many times do I evolve or work with that asset or boost it or whatever? So that's one revenue stream. Second revenue stream for us, and these are broad streams, is digital advertising. So programmatic, banner ads, audience revenue. So we made a large chunk of revenue from Snapchat shows from about 2020 to about 2024, up to $1 million a year from the biggest Arabic Snapchat shows in the world, mainly out of our office in Riyadh. And, we were getting 50-50 rev share from 6-10 billion top Snap ads because we had such hit shows, meaning the Snap team would sell the ads and we would focus on making the content. Yeah. So, YouTube can do that, and that's 50-50 rev share. So the creator economy is supposed to empower that, but it doesn't always. Instagram and TikTok don't have a rev share thing really rolled out. Yeah. So that's one element to it. And then the third bucket, which we don't really do that well on, is what we call direct to consumer. So it can be subscription, merchandise, tickets. We don't do events. We stay on digital. And that's kind of like why I'm building out streaming so much, because I want to have that subscription element. We've tried merchandise, but essentially we're media brands. We're not an apparel company, so we don't necessarily want to be an e-commerce brands. We kind of we really know what we are, and we don't want to pivot too much. We want to stay in our lane because it's hard enough. It's hard enough to do ad tech. It's hard enough to do digital publishing at scale across the region. So as much as I'm tempted to launch an events business, and I'd love to do one, I've talked to many people at length about an opportunity at that level. And as much as I'd love to do a talent management business or to make a podcast company just for big talent or to do an influencer business on the back of Augustus, I think it would take away from trying to sustain Lovin Dubai and trying to sustain Lovin in the region. You know, the Lovin app has had 150,000 lifetime downloads. It's got about 25,000 active monthly users. But what does it really do? How much of a utility is it? Okay, right now you can see the news in each city. You can get the currencies and you can get the prayer times and you can see the football results in the app. But what else? What is, to what your point earlier about personalized news? Like, how personalized can my app get in the age of AI? How personalized can the news be? So we're exploring that from a product point of view. You know, 12 of our 50 employees in Sheikh Zayed in Egypt and Cairo are product people. They're developers. And I'm doing that even though I'm not really making money from it. But I'm doing it from a point of view of like, how do I build out these things? And then on streaming side, by building out all our proprietary IP and tech, we're keeping the costs down because we're keeping that sort of OpEx software costs that are needed in it as a digital publisher. We're minimizing those.
Right. So if we think about also maybe the next frontier for publishers, would you say it may be messaging or platforms like WhatsApp, for example, who enjoy massive penetration and engagement across the world, in our region as well? And also how Meta is making it easier for businesses to utilize WhatsApp, is introducing new features. You know, you have channels, for example, today that people, you know, subscribe to on WhatsApp. Meta is also enabling, you know, these channel owners to promote their channels. So is there a space that publishers could take advantage of?
Absolutely. You know, Pavel Durov of Telegram, an Emirati citizen and Dubai resident, announced yesterday an upgraded version of Telegram that had a lot of these benefits. Yes, but, you know, we sort of leaned into WhatsApp channels about a year or two ago. There's loads of publishers there. I just don't think right now it's where people are getting their news. I think people are still getting their news on social media. They are there, and we publish. Any of our 11 cities have all between 10 and 100,000 followers on WhatsApp. We publish there. We're available there. I believe personalized media can be there, but I do think that Meta, from a product point of view, still have a way to go. You know, I'd question some of that. I'm in no position to, but I just wonder, you spin off a Threads app, but you don't spin off a chat app for ChatGPT. You try and shove it into the search part of a messaging app, yet everyone else is going to Grok and an app and ChatGPT. Why didn't you create a new app? Did you not create a new app because you spent so much effort trying to build X? So I think they're still figuring it out. So if they're still figuring it out, then we don't need to rush. We'll just go with it.
Yeah, makes sense. Honestly, I want us to talk a little bit about Audium.
Audium, yeah.
Yes. Could you just give us like a brief description of what Audium is?
Yeah, Audium essentially is a branded content studio. It's a slash between a production house and a social media agency. You know, we have 5 services. We do CGI videos, animations, fast social publishing, UGC content. You know, we have 7 studios across the region, 5 in Dubai and Dubai Production City. And it's just that ability to make content assets for clients. It can be content for a website. It can be production for a podcast. But it's marketing. It's for clients. We sort of repositioned it a little bit lately to allow it to make originals as well. So if we have a really nice idea for a series or a podcast or a book, you know, like our license in Dubai Media City and TCOM and Production City allows us to do ebook publishing, Audible and audiobooks, and you know, but what's the modern publishing house of the future? Like News Corp always owned a book publishing house. Motivate Media publish a lot of books under their special projects division for the sheikhs over the years in Dubai. So what's a digital publisher in that sense? So Audium can do special projects on book publishing and things, but most of our revenue, we're kind of, you know, say we'll do $15 million gross revenue this year. We'll do about 1 million of that on Audium. I don't want it to take over. I don't want to become a production house and an agency. We're conscious of that. But, you know, when yeah, strategically, it was a little bit of a hedge to take projects. Like we've got access to government procurement portals across the region. We have 110 staff. We can build apps quite quickly. You know, we can have people on the ground to make video in many countries and deliver things in a good way. You know, we're plugged into, we've procurement and KYC with thousands and thousands of companies over the last 10 years. So without stretching too far, what's sort of close to home, without becoming an influencer agency or something else, what can we have as incremental revenue? But also recognizing again that like people do want good digital production.
Right. Let's talk a bit about audio. So you mentioned 31 podcasts.
Yeah,
right?
well, I think there's about 31 on Apple that are active.
Right.
We have 35 sub brands, so
Yeah.
each of them should have a podcast. So the 22 Lovin cities, each of them should have a podcast. So if you open an app and you look at the Lovin Bahrain show, Lovin Beirut show, you'll find a podcast there.
Right.
And then on Smashy, there are 13 verticals. So Smashy Business, Smashy Sports, and Smashy Entertainment all have podcasts and are all growing audiences. 8 of our 35 brands we call tier 1. 8 of them make thousands of dollars of revenue a month each, right?
From audio or from general?
From general advertising,
Yeah.
general business. What we're trying to do is build audiences on others so they become tier 1 brands.
Right.
So say the tier 2 brands are active. Some of them have podcasts but aren't making money. Like Lovin Bahrain doesn't really make money, right? We have
Yeah.
2 people, remote workers in Bahrain, but we don't really make money there.
Yeah.
But it's not a viable business. It's not ready to open an office there. So we're trying to get there with that. With audio, yeah, I'll just talk, there are some, we're doing a chat show because 3,000 or 4,000 people in Dubai make podcasts once a month, right?
Right.
According to some proprietary knowledge
Stats.
data that I have, yeah.
I mean, I'd love to hear your thoughts on, well, is audio growing? Does it have a future?
Yes, absolutely.
And what are the accelerators, I suppose, right?
Distribution.
Distribution.
So the OEMs, the original manufacturers, there is LG have an OS that has 500 million downloads.
Right.
They're in every Kia and Ioniq car globally. It's a 14-year-old product. When people use smartphones, they use Android and iOS. Now there's 7 or 8 OSs.
Yeah.
Huawei have Harmony, Samsung have Tizen. Distribution, self-driving cars, the radio analog isn't the future. Distribution on audio. Apple CarPlay doesn't let you have the video on your dashboard.
Yeah.
That means audio has a role. Audio definitely has a role. It's pretty ambient. Yes, video is nice, just like subtitles is nice on social media, but like it's still social posting. Audio first podcasts should have video. There are cameras in this room, but you're not going to be precious about B-roll or doing 4 days shoots in my hometown to tell my story. You don't care. Like, it's fine.
Yeah.
You can produce this with video without being a TV company or whatever. So are doing on set, like, right? So the cost of this unit isn't the cost of flying to South Africa or whatever, doing a TV set or whatever. So audio has a future. Obviously now we're seeing it evolve, but break down audio podcasting. You know, for years people thought that scripted series were going to rule. Now everyone admits and knows that talking podcasts rule, but it's only one element.
Yeah.
And when people say they're starting a podcast, they think, who are their guests, right? Like, you know, I'm gonna pause for a second, but that's silly thinking.
Yeah.
Because that's where we are right now. Everyone, I've been on 50 podcasts in the last 2 or 3 years. Every one of them have less than 100 listens per episode, and they're not in the top 20%, and all of them have guest podcasts. Not one of those 50 people said, okay, what am I good at? I'm going to get 2 or 3 people together and we're going to chat. I'm going to build a media company.
Yeah.
And we're going to build a media company. So we're going to have rate cards, we're going to have sponsoring, and we're actually going to build a media company. But some people do it for marketing. Some people do it for vanity, to get cuts on TikTok. Some people do it because they're flush with cash, like real estate people, and they have money for content, video and things, and they'll do it for now, but that won't last. Because companies, marketing budgets stretch so far, and media companies, all their budget goes into that. Like the unit economics of a digital native of an app, right? It doesn't have enough money to feed the hungry beast of the internet by feeding it with content all the time, so it won't last. You know, when I was starting social media in 2006, 2007, by 2010 and 2012, everyone had a blog. I've just had a kid last week, a daughter, baby Faye.
Congratulations.
Thank you. And it's a beautiful Arab glow. I'm really happy. It's been really nice. And the thing that I should do now, if 15 years ago, I should set up a dad blog. So I should be in my dad phase. So I should set up a dad podcast, right? But those dad blogs on Blogger and WordPress don't exist now. And in 10 years, the dad podcasts won't exist because they're not businesses, they're hobbies. But going back to the point about long tail of digital publishing, they kind of will exist, but they're not meaningful. They're not businesses, they're long tail. Like they're not actually sustainable.
Yeah, I like what you said about distribution. I feel like if I, let's say, use social media to make my content, my podcast, let's say, discoverable, right? And I come across an end user that may be interested in my content, but is not a podcast listener, right? Does not listen to podcasts. And so, is my content incentivizing enough for him to download Spotify and like start this behavior of listening to podcasts? Would you say maybe it's on these digital streaming platforms as well to grow the podcast audience?
I think the podcast audience is growing anyway. Like, I totally get where your question's coming from about behavior, and I would consider myself a podcast listener, right? So I'm guilty of using this framing as well. However, the consumer doesn't necessarily think of this with media. They don't say, if you go and watch a movie once a year, are you a movie buff? If you, in the past, and we grew up at a time where digital wasn't as pervasive as it is now, and I bet you've read a book once. You've read a book?
Yes.
Most people have. So I think it's going to be like that, right? I think people are just going to listen to podcasts. Like before I left the house today, my wife was there, her mum was there, and we just flicked on Anas Bakash's interview with Motaz, the one he did in New York, the latest one on YouTube. But like, is my wife and her mum podcast listeners?
No.
Do social media need to change my wife's mum from Egypt to listen to podcasts? No. Does she even need to know that it's a podcast?
No.
So it's. I don't think. I don't think it's like you need to drive people over from social media per se. Going back to the point, are you a media company or not?
Yeah.
Are you a podcast host or what are you? Is this marketing? Is this discovery? And it's okay not to have the answers. Like, but like, I don't think we necessarily need to define it too much. The reason these questions are being asked is because podcasters are struggling to get listeners and they're struggling to make money. But that's because the economics of the industry isn't there. And the economics of the industry in there is because it's, on some level, it's not an industry. On some level, it's like I'm going for a run. Am I an athlete? Right?
Yeah.
Am I an athlete or am I doing exercise?
Right.
So
Could
am
be
I
both.
podcasting or am I talking?
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know? Like, am I having a meeting you for the first time or are we podcasting?
Yeah.
Are we making a media company? So both. Yes, it is both.
Yeah.
It is both.
Yeah. So you don't really have to, like you said, I guess, define it or try too hard at defining, I guess the way that people could discover your content. I think what perhaps podcasters need to listen to do is just, make it exciting, perhaps.
Yeah.
Right.
And if you want to take below the fold to the next level, becoming a media company and defining it, sure. But if someone wants to listen to the guest that you have on and they type my name into Eddie Podcasts, I'm going to come up. And it doesn't really matter who interviewed me per se or what show it was or whether it still lives. The indexing, the way it is, like if I like a certain character or a certain person, just say I like Hamid Salah, right?
Yeah.
And I want to consume content about him. If I type in him into YouTube, I'll find stuff on him. It doesn't really matter where,
Yeah.
But do I go to Quora, going back to your question about publishing, or do it, and if Cora have the best digital publishing strategy and the best YouTube documentaries about him and the best interviews, then most likely I'm going to reach there. But, if I want to learn about a business person or say Mark Zuckerberg, and I type into Mark Zuckerberg, there will be 6 or 7 interviews as audio with Mark Zuckerberg, with Adrian Heater, these guys not his right name, but these guys that he goes to release his podcast because he skipped mainstream media. And the beauty of podcasting, and podcasting as a term is like influencers. It doesn't really fit the creator economy. Like podcasting has replaced TV shows. If you're launching a book, or if you're trying to be elected for president, you go on podcasts. You don't go on the Tonight Show. But if someone gets fired from the Tonight Show, it's the biggest story of the week in America. But it's not as important as it was.
Right.
Because we don't do appointment TV. We don't sit down on Saturday night as a country and watch an interview like people did for decades. So it's not as important. But what I love about podcasting and the rules around it is that it's the techniques are being developed just like the techniques of radio were developed. If you listen to a radio station now, anywhere in the world, there'll be things that are very similar. If they play a song from Rihanna, they'll have a clip of saying, "Hi guys, you're listening to Virgin Radio. This is Rihanna." Every country you go to, that technique is there.
Yes.
But no one. That's not on any dashboard.
Yeah.
That's just copied and evolved.
Right.
And that's the same with podcasting. Your intro, what you do, will be copied and evolved.
Yeah.
The language and the semantics of, does Below the Foe have a sonic ID?
Not really, no.
But you have music that you play.
I do have an intro.
You have an intro.
Yeah.
And the language, that question that I just asked, the 3,000 or 4,000 podcasters in Dubai don't really know, that wouldn't have been asked that question before, right? But if you're building a radio station, they'll know what jingles are, they'll know what all the different things are. So this is how things evolve. And I think, the techniques of Joe Rogan, the techniques of Theo Von, the techniques of Stephen Bartlett, how he does Diary of a CEO, how he does the cuts, how he plays the fees. But then again, in 5 years' time, it could all have evolved again.
Right. Richard, it's been great. I do want to ask you one last question before we wrap up. What's your advice to marketeers in staying relevant over the next 5 years?
Put all your budget into Lovin Dubai.
Love it.
No, I think brand is so important. Like, I love brands, and I just think it's so important. But I think, we sort of talked about like publishing and the future of publishing. I'm positive about it. I think a lot of the negativity is around businesses who fail to adapt, as opposed to the positivity of publishing. If you start publishing from scratch, you don't have the problems of adapting, and you can do good publishing. And I think it's similar with marketing. On some level, digital marketing is simple because it's more, it's more measurable. You can, depending on your business, on leads, it's quite easy to plug in software. It's quite easy to use AI and have loads of ads and loads of creatives and things like that on that level. But yeah, I always say that, like, you can build in public, you can do marketing in public, you can also tweak and go, and you can adjust.
Yeah.
We're a publishing business. I don't think we've nailed our marketing. We've nailed our brand to a degree. We're good at brand, but brand is one part of marketing.
Yeah.
I don't think we've got our outcomes right.
Right.
I don't think, as a cross-disciplinary function in our company, we don't have a marketing function per se. So I don't think my audience content team know how to get outcomes. If you scroll through the Lovin Dubai carousel at the end, it'll say the Lovin Dubai show, or it'll say the app, but the messaging is mixed.
Yeah.
And it might say the Lovin app rather than Lovin Dubai app. And there's a lot of things like that. And I think the mistakes that some marketers make is they go straight to the specialist. They go straight to the lower funnel performance person, and they don't mix brand with the story, and they don't mix it with product. So I'm reluctant to specialize further until I get my team thinking of outcomes, of marketing outcomes and audience growth. Because if we build a big audience, if we have outcomes, if we have, I have a goal. We have 130,000 newsletter subscribers. I want to get that to 1 million. But I wanted to get to 1 million with active. I want them to open emails. So how do I do that with marketing? Morning Brew, who have 6 million subscribers in the US or so, they spend $50,000 a month on acquisition and churn. Most streaming services in the region, it's a churn game. When Starsplay were hiring their first head of marketing, they hired it from Booking.com. Why? Because
Performance.
they're an e-commerce brand.
Yeah.
They didn't hire it from someone who did storytelling because they didn't do originals, because they're not actually per se. When you say you're a streaming service, you buy assets, you buy content. If you say you're a content company, you tell stories.
Right.
Subtle but important difference.
Right. I love that. And I think you've built a wonderful brand. I don't think you need to worry too much about marketing. In my head, or in my opinion, marketing follows brand. If you get the brand right, then marketing is it's a performance game as long as brand is on point, right? And I do agree that brand needs to be taken seriously across the entire funnel, right? You need to think of brand when you do conversion as well. Richard, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for I guess showing up. Congratulations on your daughter. Tell us quickly, where can my audience find you?
Yeah, I'm available on most platforms. It's at Fitzy Richard, that handle that I made years ago. So yeah, I post a lot of these cuts and a lot of stuff on LinkedIn, on X. I publish everywhere. Mainly I'm on Instagram.
Yeah.
But I also have Fitzy Fund website, redeveloping the Richard Fitzgerald website, but also, follow any of the Lovin Dubai brands or Lovin brands and the Smashy brands.
Fantastic. Thank you.
Thanks a lot.